Okay, so today we're going to move on and we're going to learn a little bit more about what you're seeing here in the program. Some of this might be review for some of you. Over here on your left is the KISS IDE, the software suite, and then over here on the right is the BotBall simulator. And if you'll notice, there's a few differences in between the two in the code that is pre-populated. That means as soon as you open a program, this is what is here. So let's talk about what a few of these things are. The first thing is we have this hashtag include. We have the hashtag include here, and then we have the little brackets. These are two things that are over here. They've included this top include in the simulator, I'm assuming just because there's some calling functions that they need. These are something in BotBall, you're just going to make sure that they stay in your program. You don't accidentally delete them, and just know that they're there. What it is there's other code that other programmers have written, some of it a very long time ago, that we are using, and you have to have these up here to make those codes work. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Now we have int main. This is our calling function, and a function is basically just like a set of instructions that has some kind of name for your program to run. And as we start out here in BotBall, we'll just have the one main calling function of main. You'll want to just leave this alone. You won't need anything else here. And then we have, this is called a curly brace. Anytime you have a curly brace, you have to have a ending curly brace. So curly brace and curly brace. Now, these are really easy to get deleted when you're messing around with your code. So that is something that you'll need to be aware of. The printf statement is automatically in here. It is not necessarily something you have to have, but you can, and it is just going to print out on your screen whatever string you have in here. Anytime we have something that is like text that you would have, it's called a string. So this is our string. It's going to print out hello world. And I'll show you if I change this to hello Tiffany, compile it, and then I hit run, you will see it printed down here, hello Tiffany. The bot didn't do anything over here, not that you could see it at the time, but I just wanted to point that out to you. I'm going to move this over on this side. Okay, so we have the print in both places. You can change it there. You can change it to write the name of your program, or you can literally just leave it alone. And, okay, there we go. Now, on the simulator, they have put in the AO comment or line of text for you, also called a programming statement. So the programming statement is here. Over here, if you're typing it over here, you'll have to add it in on your own. What does this line of code do? AO basically turns off all your motors. So that will become more apparent why you need to turn off your motors in a minute. And then the last thing that's in both programs, you'll see it says return in 0 and a semicolon. This is important. It basically says this is the end of your function, and it's automatically in there. It's another thing you need to make sure you don't accidentally delete. If you're having a hard time, over here in the BotBall repository, I have something called tips, tricks, and guides. And this will show you like where the curly braces are on a standard keyboard, the parentheses, the comma, the semicolon, and the period. Also, there's a few other things that might be helpful if you're having a problem remembering where you copy and paste. And of course, my thing's in the way, but you can see copy and paste. You copy from the simulator and you paste it into the IDE. You will notice at the end of all of these programming statements, I have a semicolon. Semicolon in the C programming language is very important. In fact, I would say that's probably one of the number one reasons why your code doesn't compile initially for bot ball. So those semicolons are important. The bot ball has made it where things color code themselves automatically to help you, which is pretty nice. One thing is you'll see that keywords like return are in blue. Text strings, that's something that's going to print out on your screen. You see it's in these quotation marks, is in red. This /n, \n really, basically just tells it a new line. We're not going to be too concerned about that in bot ball this year, but just to know what it is. And then numbers will turn up, they say in aqua. It looks kind of like a light green to me, but I could see it being aqua too. And then there's one other thing that's not in here. It's called comments. You might have noticed comments last time in your code that I had written for just for fun. Comments start with this this \\, and then you can put in human words. This does not affect your program at all. All this does is help you to know what is happening in your program. For example, in this program, you'll see this little section of code has a comment. It says //. This is telling you that this part of the code is telling the robot to run straight down the middle. This portion of the code is where it tells the robot to go around number 7. And you can see that I've put comments. Comments are not required in coding. Your code will still compile, your code will still run. So what's the point in commenting? Well, there's several things that it does. Number 1, it helps you to know and keep straight what you're doing in your code. Number 2, if you leave and come back in a couple of days, sometimes you're like kind of confused by your code. And then also if someone else ever needs to use your code, they know what that part is supposed to be doing. Whenever I've helped kids with their code and I sit down and there's no comments, it's super hard because then you have to spend a lot of time figuring out what each part of the code is doing. So if you get in the habit of making comments on your code, you'll be happy and you'll see they show up in green. Okay, so our first 2 functions that we're going to be using pretty much exclusively this week, there are 2 of them. The first function that we're going to talk about is called motor. And in bot ball, normally we're working with a physical robot. And essentially, each wheel on the bot has a motor attached to it. So we have a motor that runs the wheel on the right side, and we have a motor that runs the wheel on the left side. And so we have to tell both motors what we want it to do. In programming, everything always starts with counting with 0. Normally we count with 1, 2, 3, but they start with 0. And so one of our motors will be in port 0. So we're going to tell it what port we want it to be in right here. And then I'll do a comma because I have one other piece of information that I need to tell this function. So the first function is I told it which motor I'm talking about. I'm talking about motor 0, which is your right wheel on the simulator. Now on your physical bot, depending on how you have it set up, it might be the left wheel, but that is always the right wheel for right now. So the next piece of information we need to tell this function is how much power we want to give this motor. Now it's not like 0 to 60. It has to do with what percentage. We have 0, which is completely off, and we have 100, which is as fast as the motor will go. 50 is half as fast as the motor will go. 25 is a quarter as fast as the motor will go. For right now, I'm just going to turn my motor on to 100, and I use a close parenthesis because that's what I'm passing in, and I have to end the statement with a, do you remember? Semicolon. Okay, all I have done right now is turn one motor on at 100% power. You can put in 5,000% power and it's not going to be faster. It can't go faster than 100%. Okay, so I have one motor turned on. but that means my motor is just going to go in a circle with one motor on, so I need to turn the other motor on. So I'm going to do the motor function again. Open parenthesis. This time I'm doing the left wheel, which is in port 3. And I'm going to turn its power on the same amount. And hit, again, my semicolon. Very important. Now, here's something to know about computers. Computers can read about depending on how fast your computer is, but about 800 million lines of code a second. So it's really, really fast. So what happens is if you turn both of these motors on our bot, okay, they're on, they're ready to go, and then you do AO, which tells you to turn off all your motors, your robot's going to go nowhere. It's going to just sit right there in the exact same spot, and you're going to think, oh, my code didn't do anything. It did do something, it just was so fast we couldn't see it. So you have to tell the robot, hey, just hang out and wait and let my code run for a set amount of time. And our function for this is called mSleep. And you might think sleep means it's going to go to sleep, but all it really means is wait, robot, wait, right here. And it is in, what we pass into it is in thousandths of a second. So if I put in 1, that would be 1,000th of a second. So to get 1 whole second, I put in 1,000. And I do the close parenthesis and a semicolon. I'm just going to put a space here because it spaces it out. And I'm going to go up here and I'm going to put in my comment. I'm going to say forward. I'm going to compile. Okay, it compiled. I'm going to hit run and I'm going to move it over here so you can see my bot. Remember, we have the long wait time and you can see it went forward. So your first task is going to be to go and to type this code in to your bot and to compile and run it. And then you are going to need to save this code over in this side, the KISS IDE. So I'm going to copy. I could if I wanted to. It might be easier if you want to do this and you won't forget anything. Go all the way to int main. I hit Command C because I'm on a MacBook. I'm going to erase what's here and Command V to paste it. And I'm in the way again. Move out of the way, Miss Wiley. And then I can compile it over here and I can save it. So once you've compiled it, it saves it. So now I will have this saved in my, for next time or if I want to use it again.